We often say the word as a question. When? For Rotarians, the word isn't a question. It will be that moment in time when decades of dedication and persistence result in the final eradication of polio. It's when.
When polio is eradicated, and I do mean when, not if, it will be one of the biggest advances in public health in human history.
I know that it is a question of when polio will be eradicated, not if.
Welcome to Pittsburgh, the city where the polio vaccine was discovered, the city and the home of the University of Pittsburgh, and the home of Stephanie Urchick, the president of Rotary International. I'm Maureen Lichtenfeld, the Dean of the School of Public Health at the University of Pittsburgh and the proud holder of the Jonas Salk Chair in Population Health. We are so humbled by the generous gift from the Salk family, and as you can see, I'm standing in front of the old refrigerator that Jonas Salk used. Among the gifts is this iron lung, one of the few that are left in the United States. We are so proud to be able to share that with over 400 Rotarians that are in Pittsburgh to celebrate World Polio Day. We also welcome hundreds of you on live stream to be with us during these days. We welcome you and we hope to see you soon.
Welcome to
All right, so let's get started.
Global live stream hosted by CBS Pittsburgh's morning show anchor, Lindsay Ward.
All right, now we're ready to get started, everybody. What a pleasure it is to be here. First and foremost, good evening. So good to see you. I would first like to introduce myself. You did see that brief clip, but I'm Lindsay Ward, morning anchor at KDK TV in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I will be the moderator for tonight's World Polio Day live stream. So we're talking about how this year's theme is polio, the past, present, and future. And for the next hour, you're going to hear from doctors, educators, and supporters about polio, the work that's being done to eradicate it, why we're still seeing cases today, and also how and why did Rotary get involved in the first place. So tonight, hopefully you'll get those answers and so much more, especially about the future as we move things along. So let's get started. I first want to introduce you all to the president of Rotary International, Stephanie Urchick. Stephanie is a Pittsburgh native. And she has been a Rotarian since 1991 and has participated in numerous international service projects, including national immunization days in India and Nigeria. She also encourages members to join or even start Polio Plus societies in their districts in hopes of ending this disease. Okay, Stephanie, so let's start with you. We have a list of questions for you to answer in regards to this. So first, can you tell us about the new Rotary Action Plan, which does include 4 guiding principles, and really how it's impacting communities all around the world?
Absolutely. First, I must say how excited we are to have you to be part of this event. It means a lot to us, so thank you for joining us today. So our action plan is really a result of a strategic planning process that Rotary engaged in several years ago. And we realized that as an organization, we wanted to move into a thriving future. So the action plan was a result of research and surveying and asking the Rotary world, Rotarians and non-Rotarians, former Rotarians, what they thought were the things or the ideas, the suggestions that could move us in that direction. So our action plan has 4 priorities, and they talk about increasing our impact and expanding our reach and improving engagement and getting better with our ability to adapt. But I want to focus on the very first one, improving our impact, because that's where our polio program shines. Our polio eradication program, which began in the mid-1980s in earnest, really has been a program where we have been able to talk about the impact that eradicating this disease will have on the world. We've been able since the get-go to talk about the millions of children that won't get this crippling disease. We talk about the billions of US dollars that won't be spent on ancillary healthcare costs as a result of the disease, like post-polio syndrome and other things. It's those kind of impact statements that have energized Rotarians, that have attracted partners, and that have brought us to this point in time where we have made so much progress.
Can you tell us, Stephanie, what Rotary is? Something that really caught my attention earlier, you were talking about how do we get young people to want to be engaged, to want to be interested and carry forth your mission?
Certainly, Rotary is a membership organization that does service and promotes leadership. When it was originally founded in 1905, it was founded by 4 men, or a man and 3 others. And over the years, it continued to be a gender-specific organization. But in 1989, we opened up the organization to women. We also, in 2016, created new models of membership that became more attractive to other demographics. So we have e-clubs, and we have passport and corporate, and those are all different models that may be attractive to a new generation of Rotarians. Because the way that I do Rotary is my way. But it's not the same way that an 18 to 30-year-old would be interested in doing Rotary. So we address that. And that's become one of the ways that we attract young people. They want to serve, but they want to do it their way.
And that's kind of cool, right? I mean, it allows people to really bridge the gap there, but also take it to the next level, right? And see what's ahead. All right, as president of Rotary International, what are you hoping for to change and improve as we move forward and more research and more work is being done?
Well, my number one priority is membership development. It is our number one internal project. We want to have more people join the family of Rotary. So that's what I promote and what I talk about over and over and over again. Because as a membership organization does service, the more members we have, the more hands we have to do service. And you know, the world needs us more now than ever before, including in our efforts to eradicate polio.
Is there anything that you would like to see change while you're in this position and to make something a little bit more stronger as we move ahead? Anything that you personally have a goal in mind?
Membership development, membership
membership?
development, membership development.
Now, you're fairly new to this role. Anything that surprised you since taking over?
What the surprise for me is really how much fun I'm having. This is an awesome responsibility, but I have fun every single day because I get to meet the family of Rotary. I get to see how Rotary happens around the world. I am blessed to be in this position. So that's really what is so amazing.
Do you find it's even more special because you're from here and this event is here in your home city? That has to mean something too.
Well, I don't know if you know the history about this particular Rotary event, but when I was a Rotary International Director, we were planning to have an institute here in Pittsburgh. My co-director and I had talked about having an event, and then COVID hit. And so we were not able to have an in-person event. We had to go virtual. So being here live, because Director Patrick Eakes brought the Institute to Pittsburgh, it really is a thrill because it took 4 years to get here, but now we're here. It's fantastic.
So we know that membership is definitely your number one goal here, which is something that you mentioned even beforehand. But before we wrap you up here in about a minute, is there anything that you would like to say in closing to really hone in on the importance of being a Rotarian and really what is ahead in the future for the organization?
Well, certainly There we go. Every Rotarian understands our organizational motto, which is service above self. We are in this organization because we want to change the world. We get attracted to it for different reasons. Sometimes it's fellowship, sometimes it's business networking, sometimes it's professional development, sometimes it's service. But we always stay because we get engaged in the many, many service projects that change our communities and change the world.
Everybody, let's give a round of applause for Stephanie Urchick. It really is incredible the work that you've been able to do, especially being here. And I know that you travel a lot around the world and you just share your knowledge and your experiences and whatnot. And I'm sure being Rotarian has also changed your life personally in some way.
Indeed.
All right, we're going to move ahead with Peter Salk. All right. He's the next man in line here, in case if you didn't know. Before we get to the future of polio, which Stephanie and I were just discussing here, and the rest of you and everybody else listening in, we want to kind of back things up. I say that because we need to take a step into the past before we really take a step into the future with all of this, to really get a good idea of how this started, what people went through, and of course the vaccine itself. So Peter has been the president of the Jonas Salk Legacy Foundation since 2009. He's also a part-time professor in Pittsburgh's Department of Infectious Diseases and Microbiology. His work today also includes educating the public and of course, sharing his father's life and work and looking into ways to reduce the severity of public health issues. All right, everybody probably wants to know, Peter, how did your father come to work on a vaccine against polio all those years ago?
Well, just to say something about the human side of things. When my father was young, he prayed that he could do something to help change the world. And he thought that he might go into politics and be elected to Congress and make laws that would improve things. But he was smitten by science when he stumbled upon it when he was in high school and college. And this drove him. He worked initially on the first influenza vaccine with a mentor at the University of Michigan, which was introduced at the end of World War II. The troops came to Pittsburgh in 1947 to work on a virus research laboratory here, was selected by the National Foundation for Infantile Paralysis to participate in a study to determine how many different types of poliovirus were there, because you had to include all different immunologic types in a vaccine to be successful. He did that work with alacrity and began to move his laboratory towards what can we do to get a vaccine that will work. And he wanted to do this using a killed vaccine for safety purposes. It ran against the way scientists thought at that time. They thought it had to be a live vaccine. He and his very skilled laboratory team put in enormous efforts to answer all of the questions that needed to be known before having a vaccine that could be tested on a large scale. They all just put their heart and soul into this. So that's sort of the human side of the background.
Tell me or tell us about the challenges, because I'm sure your father ran into them, and I'm sure this is a very long process. It's not like, ooh, I made a vaccine and we're done and ready to go and to save the world. I mean, there's a lot of back and forth with this, right? A lot of failed, tests, a lot of positives, and eventually moving on. Tell us about the journey that he went on.
Yeah, there were so many different things that had to be known. Donald Burke at the School of Public Health has just written a draft article that goes through all of these different challenges. And it's really an interesting piece of work that he's done, selecting the cell lines, how the different virus strains, what ones do you use? Some were good, some were not good. What's the course of immunization? What kind of dosing? How do you inactivate the virus safely to be sure that it's all killed and won't end up causing polio? question after question after question kept coming up, and all of these ended up being answered with the early studies that were done at the Watson home outside of Pittsburgh, the 7,500 plus children in elementary schools here in the Pittsburgh area as a next step, and then ultimately a 1.8 million child trial nationally. This was, yes, you're absolutely right. There were hurdles all along the way, and they all were overcome to be able to get this vaccine out and approved, which it was in 1955, sorry.
Okay. That's okay. Clearly, oh, it's okay. Clearly, it was a challenge in itself to take on that, right? Especially at that time. Was there ever a moment, if you knew, where he was like, I just can't do this, or I just don't know if I can do this with this amount of setbacks?
He did not think that way. He thought about overcoming obstacles as they appeared, and he would find ways around obstacles, but he just never let go.
That also speaks to the kind of person he was, though, right?
I'm sorry?
The kind of person he was?
It was just his personality to have a dream and get things done.
It's incredible. Absolutely incredible. So after the vaccine success, which you pointed out, what was the next step for your father? I mean, that's a huge accomplishment on its own. You know, he could have been like, all right, I'm done, I'm good, but he did so much more.
He did. For two years after the vaccine came out, he began thinking about a new institute for experimental medicine. He thought that might be here in Pittsburgh. It ended up being in La Jolla, California. He didn't want his name on it, but it's the Salk Institute for Biological Studies, doing extraordinary experimental work in fundamental biology, helping to provide the basis for new treatments and preventive steps, et cetera. But he himself was driven by the general problems that confronting humanity, and he was thinking about the problems that arise from man's relationship to man. And please forgive the male gender, was the parlance of the time, but it's relationships, the building bridges, et cetera, that we've heard about earlier today. And he wrote 4 books on this general topic: Man Unfolding, Survival of the Wisest, World Population and Human Values, A New Reality with my youngest brother, and Anatomy of Reality, Merging of Intuition and Reason. He was always thinking about humanity and its future, and I think this is very important. This is what we're confronted with, so many problems, even beyond the particular medical problems, with war, poverty, environmental change. We have to have our attention on these things, and it interacts with the polio eradication program. How can you eradicate polio in areas where there's war, where there's conflict, where there's so much social tension and anxieties and so on? We have to be turning our attention to those areas as well, if not only to succeed with this program, but the other kinds of things that are needed to improve the human condition. So I think that this is, and I'm glad to know that Rotary has its own interest in world peace, and these things come together as one.
I have to ask, how did your father's work influence you and what you decided to dedicate your life to? I mean, obviously you share your father's story, but you yourself decided to enter science too.
I have 2 younger brothers. All of us have interests very much outside of science, but somehow there was the wake behind the boat was a vacuum that drew us along. We couldn't escape that influence. And I have to say, it's been a real pleasure and an honor to be moving along in that wake and to help to continue to educate the public about what he did, why he did it, and what are the implications for the future. So when I think about my father's legacy, it has to do not only with the past, but it has to do with what are we going to accomplish in this period ahead. And I want to add another footnote, which is that being here in this room with all of you, it's just so meaningful to me. Every time I get together with Rotarians, I'm just uplifted. The quality of humanity that you all radiate and the dedication that you put into in all the different realms helping the world become a better place. I just have to congratulate you and thank you.
And I got one more question for you before we go to another video. What are you hoping for in the future? I mean, are you hoping that somebody else will carry your father's story and then someone else and someone else? Is this going to be a family thing, or you just want it to be something, just anybody?
Well, I'll tell you, yes, there was the Jonas Salk Legacy Foundation, which was started as an independent entity. What I'm really hoping, frankly, is with the gift that was given by the family to the University of Pittsburgh, and you heard from Dean Lichtfeld in the video, I'm really hoping that they'll become a closer relationship and that we can come up with a program at the university that will help to perpetuate all of this and move it into the future, not just in the tiny details of medicine, but in the realm of public health and global health, in respect to all of the problems confronting humanity. That's what I'd like to see.
Yeah, because the problems are certainly outside of Pittsburgh. All right, let's give another applause for Peter Salk, please.
John, I did not know John as well as I knew Herb. I knew Herb really well. But in 1979, Clem Renoff was president of Rotary International. And he decided, or Rotary decided, to do a 3H grant. And they didn't know what they were going to do yet. This was the first global grant. That's where 3H is. And so he talked to John Sever, who was the DG around the DC area. And John worked with NIH. He was an epidemiologist, scientist, and he wanted his opinion. What should they do in the way of a huge grant like this? And John looked around a while and he said, you got to tackle polio. You got to eradicate polio from the world. And when I looked at that, I said, we wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for John Sever. He recommended it, and Clem Renoff says, okay, that's what we're going to do. John stayed involved. I mean, he initiated. His father was a physician, a pediatrician in Chicago. He remembers his father treating kids for polio. He remembers saving Sundays, they called it, when they go to a school. Without Sever, I don't know what we'd have tried to eradicate. Smallpox had just been done in '79 from the entire world, right? Only disease, smallpox. And so Carlos Canseco said, I want a plan by Rotary's 100th anniversary, 2005, 20 years from now, how are we going to do it? And there's a committee, and John Sever was on there with a few other people, and Herb Brown was on the board of directors. And Herb was a liaison from that committee to the board. So when they decided and put together this plan, they said, Herb, we want a plan for you in charge of the United States, Mexico, Bermuda, and Bahamas and Puerto Rico. Your role is to head up the drive to raise this money. The goal was 120 million. It sounded like a lot of money. This was the first time we had done a corporate project. This was the first corporate project in Eradicate Polio, and the first time we'd done a real drive to raise $120 million. The net of that is we raised 247, and Herb's part was 119. I mean, we've raised probably over $3 billion now, but that was the start. I went down for Herb's funeral in Clearwater, and he and his wife, Dion, are very philanthropic in that area, and she has her own foundation. She does a lot of things local in the area. Here this guy gets out of this whatever President's Rotary ride in a big car and stops and says hello. I didn't know him from Adam. He didn't know me. And he just, his theme that year, I'll never forget, was act with integrity, critical, serve with love, critical, work for peace. And that theme is still important today. You think about where the world is. And that's who Herb Brown was. He was very philanthropic in his community and in Rotary.
All right, we're going to move things along now, and we want to introduce you to the chair of the Rotary International Polio Plus Committee, Michael McGovern. Michael represents Rotary on the Polio Oversight Board, has served in many Rotary positions, including as a director and vice president of Rotary International and as a trustee and vice chair of the Rotary Foundation. All right, Michael, so let's ask you this question. Why did Rotary get involved in polio eradication to begin with, and what progress has Rotary and its partners been able to make so far?
Thank you, Lindsay. Good to be with you. And I want to thank Patrick for the emphasis on polio today. It's wonderful to see, and everyone's involvement, and everyone with their end polio now swag. It's wonderful. You know, Rotary became involved because it was obvious from the original work of those that designed the vaccines that it was possible to eradicate polio, and that every child, no matter where they lived in the world, ought to have an opportunity to receive the polio vaccine. There were places that kids were still getting polio when those same families had family members who lived in other countries who were not getting polio. They didn't like it. Chief among the places was the Philippines. The Philippines decided to ask Rotary for some money, something called a Health, Hunger, and Humanity Grant. $760,000 was the total amount that they asked for. And every child in the Philippines was immunized. 2 years later, there was no polio in the Philippines. Rotarians, pretty bright people, decided that if that could happen in the Philippines, why can't it happen in the rest of the world? I'm then reminded of the little engine that could. I think I can, I think I can. Rotarians took that attitude. Rotarians were vastly underestimated for their ability to get something done, for their talents, for their skills, their ability to raise money. As we know in the story of the little engine that could, eventually the one that was least regarded ended up was the one that got the toys to the other side of the mountain, accomplished the great goal that they wished to have happen. And you know, you look at all these literary references. Yogi Berra, it ain't over till it's over. So, yeah, Yogi Berra, Yankee, or whatever he was. You know, you look at Chicken Little. I do all the great literary references. Chicken Little. Remember Chicken Little running all over saying, the sky's falling, the sky's falling? Well, a lot of Rotarians are doing that today. The sky isn't falling. We have a few more, well, quite a few more wild polio virus cases, but we have far fewer of these polio variant cases. And by the end of this calendar year, we will actually have fewer polio cases than we had last year. If you ask Rotarians that, most of them don't understand that and don't know that. Yes, we have challenges. My other is not a literary reference, but there was a woman who once lived in my little community by the name of Betty Davis. And some of you remember the quote. A lot of people say it wrong. Basically, she said in the movie All About Eve, fasten your seatbelts. We got a bumpy road ahead tonight. She said tonight. Everyone says something different, but that's what she actually said. That's where we stand right now. We're in a little bit of a bumpy period. But just as the little engine that could, we are going to get this done, and we're going to get it done by continuing to focus on Pakistan, continuing to focus on Afghanistan, continuing to do the things that we've done so successfully as Rotarians, but also having new innovation, new approaches to get this done. I remain as confident as ever we're going to get this done, but I got to quote one literary reference that is a little more elevated, Charles Dickens. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times, it was a time of hope, and it was a time of despair. Rotarians are never ending with their optimism, with their hope, and I think if we continue the passion, we continue the patience, we continue with the funding, we are going to get this done. If we can do it in 99.9% of the places, yeah, we got a few problems in these other areas. I'm optimistic, I'm positive, I hope you are too, and we will get this done.
Don't they always say your way of thinking, if it's positive, is halfway there? You're already halfway to your goal. Isn't that the case for a lot of things? You briefly mentioned Pakistan and Afghanistan. We're still seeing cases there. Why do you think that is, and what needs to be done?
This year, between Pakistan and Afghanistan, we've had 62 cases. That's 50 more than last year. Last year, we had 12 wild polio virus cases in the world. Where we ran astray is in two places. There was an area of Afghanistan, like Kandahar, which some of us remember seeing in the news quite a bit, where they did not allow house-to-house vaccination. As a result, a lot of kids were not immunized, and the polio was still circulating in the region, and some of those kids have come down with polio. Huge issue, and a huge issue we're now dealing with too is that the government, de facto government in Afghanistan has, while we only had that one city, they've now banned house-to-house vaccination throughout the country. They are allowing site-to-site vaccination, which is showing a little more flexibility, but we need to get that house-to-house vaccination to get it done. So it's a challenge. It's a challenge in Afghanistan, but even since that pronouncement 3 weeks ago, we've already seen progress and a recognition that in the end we love our children. And that's the message that some of the folks in Afghanistan are passing back along. And again, with that optimism, I'm confident that they'll recognize to put the children first. And and it means so much to the rest of the world. In Pakistan, there was too much of a focus on southern Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, northern Waziristan. That's a geographic region. And that's where all the cases were. It was where all the focus, and they took their eye off the ball in a place called Baluchistan, which is the province just south of there. It's the Quetta block, Quetta, some of you may have heard of that city. And in that city, they canceled immunization days for reasons that were really, in our view, really weren't necessary. There was a big football match. There was the football, F-U-T-B-O-L, not the Pittsburgh Steelers. The real football. I'll get myself in trouble as deputy. But there wasn't that focus. And, as a result, it got a little bit away from them. And they also had kids, we were discussing it before, who are undernourished. They get the polio drops, runs right through their system, and as a result, they don't gain any immunity because their systems just aren't functioning. Their gut isn't functioning right. So, that's why the case, fortunately, part of Rotary's funding, that this area here is one of the most generous parts of the world that give, fortunately because of this area, just last month we were able to immunize 45 million children in Pakistan. And the government has they've heard from the Rotarians there that we're not going to stand for this. The kids need to be immunized. It's for the kids' benefit. So I am hopeful. I'm feeling optimistic. But you know what? You got to keep at it every day. You got to, chug up that mountain. And I'm also, and one other literary reference before I be quiet. It isn't literary. Chutes and Ladders. Anyone remember that game? If you remember Chutes and Ladders, you have a dice. You throw it on the board, and then you land on a certain block. There's 100 squares on the block. Sometimes you land in a spot where there's a slide or chute, and you go down and you lose ground and you have to start again. You roll the die again, and then you land on a spot that there's a ladder, and you suddenly jump up. Well, if you know this game, and if you remember it, there's 100 squares. I recently read Wikipedia, where you find out everything. The odds of eventually getting to the top are 39, it takes 39.2 throws of the die to get to the top. We've been at this for 37 years. So I know it's not scientific. I'm sorry, Dr. Salk. But if you look at the Chutes and Ladder principle, we're 2 years away. Thank you.
So, Michael, I certainly have to point out the passion that you have, which is everyone can feel it in this room alone, right? And certainly through the live stream. It's incredible, and obviously how much you care and you want to make a difference. But I also hear an underlying of frustration too, right? So where do we go forward? You talk about optimism, you talk about what we need to do and the changes. Before we wrap things up with you, what is the timeline to finally get this done and really move ahead?
The goal remains that we'll have no wild polio viruses cases by the end of next year. But in order to reach that, obviously we need the continuing financial support. And we have some challenges internationally in that area, not with Rotary, but with some of the governments around the world. The other thing we need to do is have a more integrated program. We've sort of been what they call a silo program. We're only dealing with polio. We need to actually do more of the Polio Plus that we talk about. It's all about knocking on doors and the house to house in many of these places. The mothers in particular, the fathers as well, but it's mainly the mothers, are looking for the polio drops. They're looking for us for the other routine immunization. They're looking for malaria bed nets. They're looking for other things. Why are you doing this? We don't have clean water. And increasingly, we need to look at other things we can be doing to help. And it's the integration we were discussing beforehand. It's eventually we're going to move solely to the IPV, the injectable, the inactivated polio vaccine. And eventually that's going to come in so that we stop these polio variant cases. So it's all of that working together.
I think all of us can agree that we love the character that you brought here tonight for sure, and just giving it a different look than not making, it is a serious topic, right? Life or death, but you're also making it engaging for people and hopefully energize people who are watching this but maybe aren't familiar with Rotary or aren't familiar with the history of polio. So we thank you for that, Michael.
I try to prove that old men with gray hair can accomplish.
All right, we appreciate that. We're going to get to another video here in just a moment. Again, let's do another round of applause for Michael because he's been quite entertaining but informational as well.
Hi everyone, I'm Minda Dutler. I'm a polio survivor, an athlete, and a global health advocate. My legs were paralyzed because I contracted polio as a baby in India.
Hi, my name is Ina Pinkney, and I got polio 11 years before there was a vaccine.
At age 4, I was stricken down in polio. At that time, I was in London, and the virus was sweeping the world.
Hi, I'm John Nanny, District 7630 Polio Plus Chair, member of the Polio Plus Advocacy Task Force for the U.S. Congress, and a polio survivor. I know what life is like when a child is not vaccinated. A child that comes down with polio will suffer their whole life.
Hello, family of Rotary. World Polio Day on the 24th of October is a chance to recognize our progress and to encourage people to act to finally eradicate polio. This year, we have experienced both progress and challenges. But as people of action, it is up to us to build on our progress, face the challenges, and stay focused. I was inspired by frontline health workers during a visit to Karachi, Pakistan earlier in the year. Men work diligently to immunize thousands of children every day at traffic checkpoints, while women go house to house to reach families directly. Some health workers literally climb mountains to vaccinate children in remote locations, and their determination never wavers. After witnessing the dedication of Karachi's health workers firsthand, I know that it is a question of when polio will be eradicated, not if. As long as we continue supporting health workers, advocating for polio eradication, and raising awareness and funds to reach every child with the vaccine, there is nothing we can't achieve together. Our mission to rid the world of polio is the greatest example of our action plan at work. Our collective action has brought us 99.9% of the way there. But we can't end the threat of polio without your help. On this World Polio Day, please donate to the End Polio Now campaign and help us meet our target of $50 million to earn the full 2-to-1 match from the Gates Foundation. Together, we will fulfill our promise to the children of the world and their families and light the way toward a brighter future. Together, we will end polio.
All right, we have Stephanie here, as you know, if you just heard in that video about your time with frontline workers, and we have to know what do they bring to this fight into ending polio, but also the women that are involved as well, Stephanie.
They bring the determination, and they're doing our work. They're doing the work of polio eradication. When I met with the women in Pakistan, we were primarily there to say thank you to them, because we wanted them to know that all of us have their backs, that we appreciate the work that they're doing. And so we had a celebration, we took photos, we gave them certificates, and although most of them could not speak English, I could tell by their eyes and by the translators telling us that they were saying, thank you. We appreciate knowing that the Rotary world is behind us.
You brought also a wealth of knowledge to them that maybe they didn't have. What was that like for you to literally educate these women and these frontline workers and to really get them to be motivated to do what they were doing, the work?
Well, primarily we were sharing how far we've come, because we wanted them to know that it's just a small area in Afghanistan and Pakistan, just a small area where they're working, that remains our challenge. And so it was important for them to know, so that they understood the importance of the work that they continue to do on behalf of the world of Rotary.
And it's there, you're giving them the opportunity to spread that message, right? And hopefully that other people become more aware about the importance of the message that you're delivering.
Absolutely. You know, that's part of our story in Rotary. You know, when you think about it, when polio is eradicated, we all become a part of history. We can tell our children, our grandchildren, that as Rotarians, we were part of a movement that helped eradicate only the second disease on the planet. That's important.
Not many people can say that. Not many can say
that's correct.
Right? That's really incredible if you stop and think about it. You know, as we move forward with these frontline workers, what do you want people to know about the importance that they're making specifically to this cause?
That we have to continue to be vigilant with our advocacy, with our financial support, so that they have the resources and the tools to continue to do what they do. And that's what we do best. We raise money, we advocate for polio eradication, we mobilize in places around the world where we need to get in quickly and get the job done. So that's our mission, to continue to do those things.
It's a mission that will continue for a long time, because there's always more, right? There's always more to learn, more people who need to understand the importance of this, because a lot of people may not be aware this is a life or death situation, and it's still happening today.
Till it's done.
Till
Right.
It's done.
Exactly.
So as we think about like the future and what people want to know about being a frontline worker, or even about women, you talked about how they couldn't quite probably understand you, or you maybe understand them, but there was a common language there, right? What was that common language that you really took with you when you came back?
Well, for me, it's psychic income. Looking into the eyes of those women told me everything I needed to know, and it made me feel good right here. It's that salary that we all get in Rotary, psychic income. And I also had a chance to see the male frontline workers. They were going to the transit stops, and I remember going onto a bus with them, and there was a man with a child in his arms. And I'll never forget, I gave that baby the drops, and I looked at him, and again, I don't speak Pashto, he doesn't speak English, but looking at him, I knew he was saying, "Thank you for saving my baby."
That is an incredible feeling, to know that you made a difference in that man's life and his family.
We all did. Every one of us who contribute to polio, who stand behind the effort, we are the ones who who can share in that feeling.
Yeah, it's amazing. Stephanie, we thank you, and of course for all that story that you shared.
Little drops change the world one by one, solving problems under the sun. Hands together we stand tall, Rotarians break down every wall. From cities bright to quiet towns, service light never drowns. Champions with hearts aglow, and polio now is the goal we know. Let's roll up our sleeves, with every drop we believe. No more pain, no more tears, and polio now cheers. Bound by purpose we take flight, darkness bows to the light. One mission, voices sound, spread hope, spread it around. In each child smile we see the promise of a brighter legacy. Together we write history, one more battle, one endlessly. Heroes wear no cape, no crown, never letting each other down. Hands unite with a vow, and polio now. Let's roll up our sleeves, with every drop we believe. No more pain, no more tears, and polio now cheers. Let's roll up our sleeves, with every drop we believe. No more pain, no more tears, and polio now cheers. Let's roll up our bumpers, we say polio now, we believe. Bound by purpose we take flight, darkness bows to the light. One mission, voices sound, spread hope, spread it around. In each child's smile we see the promise of a brighter legacy. Together we write history, one more battle, one endlessly.
That was a fantastic video. Okay, our last speaker is John Germ, and John joined Rotary back in 1976. He served as president and chair of the trustees of the Rotary Foundation, was chair of the International Polio Plus Committee, and in 2013, the White House recognized him as a champion of change. John, a lot of progress has been made here to eradicate polio, but what will be required to complete the eradication of it?
Reaching every child in the world. In order to do that, though, we've got to increase our leadership. We've got to have strong leadership out of the countries. Pakistan went through an election that took 6 months. Mike was in Pakistan a year ago. If he would today, he would not be working with the same people that he worked with before, so that's got to change. Afghanistan is going to have to change to where we can go door to door, or we're not going to get there. We have got to change in Rotary in the fact that we've got to provide leadership to our younger Rotarians to emphasize to them why it's important that Rotary started this and why it's important for Rotary to finish it. Every person in this room is a polio supporter, polio eradication supporter. We've got to convince all those back in our clubs to do the same thing. Complacency is not going to get this job done. It's going to take leadership, it's going to take integrity in order to get it done.
You talk about the importance of people taking it seriously. What do you mean by that, and what can we do to have younger people, you mentioned younger people, to really understand the importance, to really bring us together and to continue the fight?
I think it's the education. Very rarely in my own club does anybody ever talk about the eradication of polio. Now, we have a charity and club projects committee. We contribute to once a year to the annual fund or to the program. Most clubs have a time of the year that they raise funds. But I don't think we have a time of the year that we educate. Why do we need this money? Why do we need to have clean water? Why do we have to have proper sanitation? Those affect the eradication of polio. I can remember the time when my family would not let me go out and play at the park because of the fear of polio. 1957, the number 2 problem in the United States, fear, was polio. Number 1 was nuclear war. We are not educating people anymore about the relevance of Rotary and polio.
So what can we do? I know it's a very simple, basic question, right? But what can individuals do, especially for younger families?
One thing is you can contribute funds. The budget this next year is going to be about $1 billion. Rotary, along with the Gates Foundation, will give $150 million. So Rotary is an important part of funding these programs. We've got to advocate with the governments of the world. Germany is a strong supporter. Canada is a good supporter. All these different countries, but a lot of these countries are cutting back on what they're giving to help eradicate polio. We're not going to reach these children of the world if we don't have the funds to do it. We now have a NOPV2, which helps get rid of what I used to call vaccine-derived viruses. They're now calling variant. I'm not sure why that changed, but that's WHO and UNICEF that said they do that, so that's why it got done. But we've got to, that vaccine was basically funded by the Gates Foundation. So they not only match what we give, 2-to-1 match, they do a lot of other things to do that. The NOPV2 has been very successful because it allows that vaccine not to discrete out as quickly as it had been done. So we can help educate our members as to why we could continue to do this. Another thing I think we're going to have to understand is that, and Dr. Jonas Salk made the comment one time, that we're not going to eradicate polio without his vaccine. Well, that's true. But we couldn't eradicate polio without the Sabin vaccine either, because that gave us the individuals that could go out into place the drops in the mouth. You didn't have to have a nurse or somebody that was qualified for injectable vaccine. So we've got to get that worked out to where people believe that we can and will eradicate polio. So that's something. We got to continue to raise money. We got to continue to raise awareness. We got to continue to go out and advocate with the U.S. government, the Canadian government, like they just recently did, $100 million. Germany just recently contributed funds over a period of time. We got to have patience. I have very little patience. That's what my wife will tell you every time. But we've got to have patience because we're not going to reach all those children tomorrow. It's going to take some time. Polio is a vicious virus. And it's a fighting virus. Every time we think we've made progress, we have to take a step back. Every time we think we've done something good, something else happens. Look what happened to Gaza. Who could have ever predicted that situation? But yet, because of the organization, working with our partners, WHO, UNICEF, Gates, Gavi, all these other partners we have, they've been able now to do 2 rounds of vaccinations within Gaza. They used $560,000 of Rotary money to to help buy a vaccine in order to reach those children. We got one more round to do. Those are unpredictable things. We can't predict all of those things. But I'll guarantee you, if we don't continue on, we're not going to get there. And it's patience, tolerance, and perseverance that's going to get us there.
So another...
And by the way, as a new Paul Harris fellow, you can contribute too.
Something that got my attention I want to bring up is the fact that you mentioned that a lot of these countries are cutting back on the funding. I heard you say funding at least 4 or 5 times in what you were explaining, the need for the money. Do you think that we need to start thinking about going more local and say, hey, we can't rely on these big foundations or these big corporations or these big whatever it may be to do the funding? Like, we're going to have to maybe do something more grassroots in order to fill those gaps?
Well, I think we do. I just got the letter yesterday. I just called the lady today from the Jack Blaine Foundation, and they're going to give us $300,000, $100,000 a year for 3 years. And they're doing something different, though, than just giving that money. They are really supportive of what work we're doing, but they're also challenging the Rotarians within that particular district. If they give $500, they'll match it with $500. So I think matching programs are going to be more important than they have been in the past. That takes education as to why you should do it. It's not just a one day out of the year situation. It's not just on Polio Day, Worldwide Polio Day. It's going to take us doing it all the time. But yes, I think we do have to go out and reach out. We're not approaching businesses like we should be doing. Most of the business leaders are in Rotary, a lot of them are in Rotary, but the fact is they think in smaller terms, not in the bigger terms. And I think there's grants out there that we can get.
What is the end game then?
The end game is very simple. Kill this virus and eradicate polio and save the children.
And I have to ask, what was it like to be recognized by the White House? How many people can say that they've been recognized by the White House? I have to throw that out there, John. I just do.
John Sever was there at the same time I was. I felt very honored that to do. It's a great honor, but you're accepting on behalf of a lot of people that did a lot of work. And it was a humbling experience.
John Germ, thank you so much for sharing that information and letting us know what we need to do. And funding is certainly one of the bigger topics here when it comes to eradicating polio. So we now want to do the closing of this program, and we want to thank you so much for joining us on this very incredibly special World Polio Day live stream right here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It's been an incredible session, and I hope you all here feel energized about the progress that's been made and the work that still needs to be done in order to eradicate polio. So I also like to extend a massive thank you to our incredible panelists here. We got Rotary International President Stephanie Urchick, of course Dr. Peter Salk, Mike McGovern, and past Rotary International President John Germ for their insights into the past, present, and future of this global effort. So let's remember that we all have a role to play in ending polio for good. Rotary's commitment to this cause remains as strong as ever, and with the help of people like you who are watching, of course, everybody here, the dozens of you here present in Pittsburgh, we thank you, and we are confident that we will succeed. Again, we thank you so much for your support, for being part of this historic moment. Let's give one final round of applause to everybody here.
Right now, at this very moment, there's a movement happening. See, Rotary sparked an idea that was once unthinkable, ridding the world of a horrible disease, polio. A global community of scientists, advocates, governments, and health workers, people all doing their part to beat the unbeatable. track the untraceable, reach the unreachable. And it's all happening right now, people. This part of history belongs to everybody, so tell everybody, near, far, young, and old, that it will take everybody. Because legacies aren't forged overnight. Making history isn't instant. In the decades since Rotary and its partners started this journey, billions of children have been protected from polio. But we still have work to do. And this part's on us. All of us. Part-time, full-time, full stop. Right now, no breaks, no indifference. You and me. Because polio isn't unstoppable. We are. Together, we end polio.
That concludes our event.
Great job.